Hey, everybody. Love that song. Thanks for playing that, Kurt. Thanks for being here, everybody, and welcome to Deborah Kobylt Live. We've got a fun and really interesting show for you today. In studio with me is Ellen Shane with her wonderful husband, MIchel Shane. MIchel was actually joining me, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, right, MIchel?
Yep.
Okay, and they are here. Now we're joined by his lovely wife, Ellen, and they're here to continue a dialogue that we've been talking about, which was the MIchel Shane Foundation. Their daughter, if you may recall, sadly, was tragically killed on the Pacific Coast Highway back in 2010 while she was walking home from a friend's house, getting ready to meet her dad. Her dad walked us through the events that evening. I don't know how they can even be seated, let alone standing. You two stay in my heart all the time, and I'll tell you why. Your attitude, I don't know how you can continue. You're very special people. I've had dinner with them. I've gotten to know them. I've been reading their story incessantly. And, you know, today we brought Ellen in particular, you know, to continue the dialogue, to talk about grief. Also in studio, we have an editor, a film editor, right? Director, thank you. Daniel Ralston, and he's actually taking video of this entire dialogue, right? Because it's going to be used as part of a documentary that you're both doing. Daniel Ralston is a music video director, to talk about the dangers of the PCH, right, on the PCH in Malibu.
Correct.
Okay, did I get that right? I mean, I didn't even take a breath.
On PCH is what we're calling it. On
PCH is the working title. When will this be out?
Probably in the fall.
Probably in the fall. Where do you think that this will be distributed?
We want to do festival routes to start with,
okay,
and then afterwards, hopefully, get it picked up. And if it doesn't get picked up, then we'll put it on YouTube, because it's one of those rare occasions where we're not doing it for profit. We're doing it because we want people to see it, get angry, and create change.
What kind of change can you make? For those people who don't know the Pacific Coast Highway out in Malibu, it's an entire stretch that runs from, frankly, one end of California up to Northern California and beyond. But the particular stretch in Malibu is really dangerous. People are parked on the shoulder. It's a pretty dangerous area. And, you know, people are just crossing in the middle of the road to get to the beach. I don't know what they can do. Maybe little bridges that cross over. You know how they have?
Yeah.
Because they have them in Santa Monica. Can they do something even just like that?
Yeah, I mean, we've investigated it. A bridge like that costs $1 million to build. So what we thought would be amazing would be to get sponsored bridges, because there's 500 to 800,000 people that come into Malibu on a glorious weekend. So that's free publicity. That's promotion that is sticky. Mm-hmm. So the city's trying to figure out what to do. They've got to. I mean, that road hasn't been fixed since 1957.
Most roads in California have not been fixed since 1957. It's getting tough out here.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, people always talk about the traffic in L.A. and how it's very difficult to get around. And it is, because there's no real infrastructure. There's no way to change it unless we start double-decking all these roads.
I think it's important to say that in Malibu, what's particular is that our main street is a highway. There's no alternative route to go through the city. So that's why it's a particularly difficult situation.
What do you do? I mean, and again, I know you're doing a documentary on this, but what do you do?
I think a couple things. One is that if you can raise the level of awareness of people who are coming to visit and drive into the city, that would be huge, because a lot of the problems are caused by visitors who are stopping short to grab a parking spot, who are busy looking at the ocean instead of paying attention to what's going on in front of them. It's only 2 lanes. It's kind of an antiquated highway.
Really antiquated. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say the possibility of accidents happening are significant, especially when, as MIchel was saying, the number of tourists and people coming in were inundated.
Well, again, for those who don't know the road, I mean, sometimes you go to park because, like you said, you find a spot and you're like, I have to stop and back into that spot. Meanwhile, people are coming behind you at 50, 60, even higher miles an hour. And
that's exactly right.
So I applaud you for doing this. And, of course, all of this is because of what happened 7 years ago now.
And not only to Emily, there's been so many subsequent deaths on the highway. And that's why, yes, we were outraged and upset about our own daughter, but when you see it happening continuously, you feel like you just need to take action to do something to help prevent.
our daughter wasn't killed because of the highway.
No,
our
she
daughter
was killed because of a
murdered.
lunatic
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
driving on that
But
highway.
that's what motivated us.
Right.
Is it made us look at the road and go, what the hell?
Yeah, I mean, is there any way to raise money by sectioning off a small little part of the highway?
I just want to say something. I disagree
ahead.
with you in the sense that where Emily was walking, if there would have been bollards there, she
Right.
might have not been hit the way she was hit, and she may still be alive today. So I disagree with that. And that was one of the things I was hoping would come out of the studies and things we did, was that in the pedestrian heavy zones there could be something like that. But there were all these bureaucratic reasons dealing with Caltrans and the city. I don't even know all the minutia that prevented anything like that from being pursued further as a solution, at least at the time we looked into it.
But to get back to what I was saying, the section, the area, and we're going to get into that if you don't mind. I wanted to go through that with you from your point of view, if you could relive that evening for us a bit. But in that section, that area where she was walking, perhaps to raise funds for this and call it, the Emily Shane, they
like
name,
a corridor or something.
Yeah,
or
the Emily
passage,
Shane corridor,
right,
the
or
Emily
something.
Shane section. You know how they do that? And on highways, you see, sponsored by. And very often it's by an officer who was gunned down or killed or run down. And have you looked into something like that for raising funds? That could be a way too.
Right.
Again, you have to go through the bureaucracy for that, but it's been done, right? So just to say, we talked last night a little bit. I asked if you were comfortable sort of backtracking a little bit about that evening. But before we do that, I'd like you to read a poem that your daughter wrote. Would you do that for me? So
Sure.
we get a little bit of what Emily was like when she was walking on this earth here with us. And
I will
well, she was
read
12
it.
years old, right? This is
She
pretty
was 12
special.
when she wrote this. She was 13 years old when she was killed in 8th grade. So, but she wrote this when she was 12. I did not know, I just want to preface that, that she wrote this. I actually found it in a drawer amongst her things when I was going through her things after she was killed. So the poem is called Beauty, and this is what she wrote. Beauty is looking into the mirror and saying you're beautiful. Beauty is kissing under the stars. Beauty is conquering your fears. Beauty is living your dream as big as possible. Beauty is dancing on stage. Beauty is being bold on your own. Beauty is living life on the edge. Beauty is watching the sun come up. Beauty is wrapped in one word, and that word is love, by Emily Shane.
Okay. What was that like when you opened her drawer and saw that?
I had no idea she'd written that poem, and I thought it was so beautiful
That is really beautiful.
and insightful.
She's such an artist.
I found she was very much beyond her years, although I didn't realize it till after she was killed, which is interesting. She also wrote a bucket list that I have on me, and
What's on her bucket list?
it was an interesting mix of things a 13-year-old girl might write, like marrying Justin Bieber. And of course, you have to realize back at the time she actually discovered him on the internet before he became a big sensation. She was already a huge fan of his. So it was things like marry Justin Bieber. But then there were
That
things
is
like,
adorable. I just have to say. It's really cute from a little 12-year-old's point of view. And now that I think back to when I was 12, I'm trying to think of who I wanted to marry. I don't know, but you do start thinking about that when you're 12 years old,
I had a
right?
crush on Davy Jones of the Monkees. I
Oh, that's
remember.
hysterical. Oh, that is so cute. So you went
Can't
for
relate.
You know, when they had the stars in his eyes, and
You went for Davy Jones and she went for Justin Bieber. Kind of a similar type, right? Sort of, kind of, right? But they kept Davy Jones's image kind of clean. But I think he was a wild guy inside. But anyway.
she also thinks like write an article to the LA Times, travel to London and England, design my own line of clothing. I mean, watch the sunrise. She had such an interesting list. I don't know if you remember some of the other ones, Michelle.
No, those are the
But
main
they were
ones.
pretty remarkable. Sleep in a store. I never knew what store she meant.
Like a department
Yeah,
store.
like sleep overnight in a store. I don't know if she was going to try on
Okay,
clothes.
I've always wanted to do that. I just have the whole place to myself.
Yes.
I don't like going shopping as it is because I'm just like, where do I start? And I don't like a stylist because they always pick stuff out for me that I would never wear. I'm like, no. So to be stuck in a store, if you will, all night, sleep there, wake up, and do what you want. Oh, she's a smart girl. I would have gone with her. Can you walk me through a little bit, that evening when you got the call?
Well-
Because I know your husband was going to pick her up.
Yes, it was
It was a very quick timeline, wasn't it?
It was spring break, and so we were off normal schedule, and everyone was happy not to be in routine of school and everything that entailed. She had had a sleepover the night before. I had been out all that day, checked in with her when I arrived home. She wanted to be picked up, which, by the way, was unusual because usually she begged to sleep over another night or stay over longer. She was at a friend's, and as you know, MIchel had arranged to go and pick her up. And it was very odd because MIchel was calling me and saying, where is she? She's not here. What's happened? Why isn't she here? And I called the house and they said, well, she left. And I mean, you know the story. He had actually passed the accident, if you want to call it that. It wasn't really an accident, but he saw an accident not knowing what it was. That was his own daughter waiting for her. And then finally I got a phone call. And it was a very strange phone call. I think the officer who called me himself was a little confused or sort of not making sense to me because the first thing he said to me was that he needed my permission to airlift my daughter, and I had no idea what he was talking about.
I couldn't have handled a call like that.
I said, what do you mean? But what permission? What? And finally, after a few back and forth, he said to me, there's been an accident. And that's when my heart sunk. And I was on my cell phone. I called MIchel on my other line and said, there's been an accident, something's happened. And that's when he said, oh my goodness, I saw something. And I told them on the other line, I said, do not move her till my husband arrives because he's right there and I want him with her. I don't want her alone. And I mean, you know the rest. They were trying to save her life in an ambulance. I was spared. I was not there. I was at home and I was waiting to hear back to know what hospital to go to, what I should do. And my mind was racing. Do I feed and walk my dogs now? And I was sort of going through all the things that I should do so I could get over to the hospital. And of course, then I got the call that she wasn't going to the hospital.
From your husband?
Yes, I didn't even know it was him because all I heard was crying. I actually assumed it was Emily. And I said, honey, are you okay? Don't worry. And finally, I just heard the sobbing continue, and then MIchel said to me, Ellen, it's not Emily, it's me. And then he told me, he said, she's dead. And I mean, you can't even compute that. Your mind doesn't even know, like, what do you mean she's dead? She can't be dead. And then the ENT who had been working on her took the phone, and he said to me, look, I'm not going to lie to you. When we got to her, she was young, she was strong, her heart was beating. He said, we worked on her for 45 minutes, and we really tried to save her. We just couldn't. But he also told me something that gave me some solace, because he said, if it's any consolation to you, I want you to know her pupils were blown when I got to her. And what that means is that had she survived, there would have been no brain activity.
So she had trauma to her head.
Oh, yes.
Yes, it was probably a blessing that she did die once she was in that state.
And from what we know, the madman who killed her, there were 911 calls all the way up to that point, that there's a lunatic on the road driving at 90 miles an hour, but I guess nobody got to him in time.
That's
Did
what
they try?
happened.
Yes.
There were over 6 911 calls, and we heard the calls played when we were in court during the trials for his ultimate prosecution for murder in the second degree. And it was clear that he was splitting lanes, going into oncoming traffic and up on the shoulder and speeding and driving like a maniac. He did stop at red lights, which is interesting, but his driving was completely erratic and terribly unsafe.
I guess he had to make sure he would save his own life and not run into anyone, right? He wanted to make sure he didn't hit anyone on that end. But
and he had written a suicide note. I'm sure you heard the story on the previous interview, but he had written a suicide note and was supposedly going to kill himself, although truthfully I question that, because I think
people like that don't kill themselves.
I think
they're out to. They're not even thinking. They're just in. They're just in a
he was
state.
angry. That's
and he
right.
didn't care who else was in the way. But he wasn't out to kill himself.
No, he could have gone over the cliff at Topanga easily on his way down to PCH
they don't
and not
do that.
harm. No, he was really not. I think he was almost like an angry child who says, I'm going to run away from home and goes through the motions, but isn't really going to do it. That kind of mentality.
And he also had no remorse.
Zero remorse. And that's why I wanted justice.
What did he say in court? You told me last night. Could you repeat it?
It wasn't in court.
Oh, it was not.
It
Okay.
was. Are you talking about when he found out that he had killed?
No, the sentencing.
Didn't he say? You were telling me last night what he said, that he just didn't. He didn't care.
No, he showed absolutely no remorse. In fact, the only time he ever expressed any kind of sorrow was when he was being sentenced, and I'm sure he was coached to do so. And then it was a very lame statement. He literally said, I will never forget his words. He said, I would like to express my sorrow to the Shane family. And in the very next breath, he said, life takes an unexpected turn sometimes. That is what he said. He did not say,
that I caused, by
right,
the way.
no, that I drove like a maniac, that
They don't
I
do
caused
that.
this child's death, that I impacted a family, her friends, relatives, community, whatever. No, he didn't own it, if you want to use that expression.
What amazed me about the two of you was that night you got together and decided you had to do something.
I can't take credit for that. That was actually Michelle.
Yes, it was.
He immediately, that night, the coroner came over and literally brought me some of the rings I'm wearing now that were hers, that she was wearing,
Which
full of
ones?
blood. This was hers. And we actually have the same initials, which is interesting. And this one was hers. And I don't even know where she got this ring, but I love it. And there's a message on it, and it says, nothing is impossible. I don't even know where she got it. But
She was a really deep thinker. And you know,
yes.
when you're a kid, especially at that age, you don't really divulge those feelings like the poem that you read that she wrote. So you don't really know how deeply they're feeling, because a lot of times a kid is embarrassed to, to tell their parents that they think this deeply. Like some of the lines in those poems, in the poem that she wrote, I thought come on, they're of an older soul,
I agree. And I think I told you that the day after she was killed, I went into her room, and she had always kept her blind half closed. And I opened it, and there was a paper stuck on the window. It's still there. I have not moved it. And she had written out and colored in this phrase, and it says, close your eyes, open your mind.
Okay, she's an amazing human being.
I mean, what 12 or 13-year-old, I don't know when she put that up there, but those words actually came to become very real to me.
Well, you told me when we were at dinner that that room is now your office. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I love that. So you kept that part of her. She's in the room with you, and all you have to do is look up, and
I feel her
there
energy
are her
in
thoughts.
there.
Oh, I
Yes.
would too. I'm sure.
Yes.
I am sure about
It
that.
took me a long time to be able to turn her room into an office, though. I wasn't able to go through her things. It took me 6 years to be able to do that.
Is that a magic number or
No.
something? Because
No.
because I told you last night I want to talk. There's a lot I want to talk to you about, but one is about grief. I do think one of the most difficult, obviously, is first of all not only losing a child, but losing a child on that kind of a tragic. When I say accident, I mean it wasn't expected. It's like
No, it was a
one minute
shock.
you're going to, it's a shock.
You're picking her up, and then she doesn't exist
She
anymore.
doesn't exist anymore, and this is someone you plan to spend your life with. I told you, my mom died. It was an accident. She fell and cracked her head, and it was very hard for me. It's still hard because it wasn't that long ago. But she was my mom, and she lived her life and had a life. Do you know what I mean?
I do, but I don't think it matters when it comes to grief how long somebody lived.
But you said 6 years, and I know I haven't been able to go through her stuff until recently. But it has been 6 years. It's just been a few years, and only now. And sometimes I'll go through her stuff, and she would do stuff really, really early. Like, for example, my birthday's in December, so she had already bought my birthday card. So I
love
went through
it.
it, and she always dated it. And she'd put like 12, 22 in the year, whatever it was 3 years ago. And then I couldn't stop crying. I'm like, oh my God, this is my birthday
How
card.
thoughtful.
And then she didn't. She died in September, so she must have just bought that thing. But my point is, I couldn't go through it either. It's taken me just a few years. Only now, and I mean now, I'm in the process of just going through her stuff. But again, It's a mom. It's
I
my
don't think there's a
mom.
timeline, and I think that it's different for everybody, and there's no rules. And I remember the woman who I saw regularly for a period of time for grief therapy said something to me that I think is very helpful for anybody, and that is, if she said to me, because I said that to her, my friends and even some of my family members were saying, you need to go through her stuff, you need to clear up her room, you need to change it. And she looked at me and she said, I want to ask you something. She said, if I told you that I was going to go and do something that was going to cause me tremendous pain, sorrow, and make me feel awful and sad, would you tell me to go do it? And I said, well, of course not. She said, then why do it?
I have a thing about that. It's your own timeline. I don't care if it's a
Exactly.
year, if it's a month,
It may never happen.
or it may never happen.
Right.
And we were discussing this again. I just think it depends upon your personality,
Yes.
your emotional makeup, intellectually how you can process things. There's so much that goes into it that I don't think there's any one person who can tell anybody
No,
what
there
to
is
do.
no, and I agree with you. There are no rules when it comes to grief.
But may I also say, the two of you are outstanding people. No one blamed anyone. No one said, "Oh, I shoulda."
I did that at the beginning.
But still,
But I didn't blame Michelle. It was me. I should have, whatever.
That's what
You
I
can
mean.
fill
You
in the
didn't blame
blanks.
yourself. You didn't blame
Right.
anyone. You blamed you. But it was for a very short period. You immediately
Very.
went into action mode, Michelle, to your credit, and decided you had to turn this around. And you formed.
The website. We started with
website.
a Pass It Forward website. That was his idea to honor her persona and who she was. Because in the website obviously was a Pass It Forward website where we were encouraging people to do good deeds and acts of kindness for others in her memory. And at the beginning, there was an onslaught, if you remember, Michelle, of people posting from incredible, amazing things to just small little gestures that were just as meaningful or beautiful. And then my story is that after, I don't remember how long, a period of time, and I'm going to use the word, it wasn't that I thought, oh, I should do something too. I felt compelled. I had to do something.
I would too. That's my personality.
I had to
because
do
if I just
something.
sat there and cried over a card, I would fall to pieces. So
Yes.
in a way, you have to do it for yourself.
Yes.
Because you're still there, and you have two other daughters. You have three, but you have two that are still here.
Yes.
What do you do? So
It's not only that, when death is so final, I'm the type of person, it sounds like you are too. If there's a problem, an issue, I'm going to solve it. I'm going to work around. I'm going to figure out a way.
we are so
Well-
similar, right? Well, the minute we met, I think we figured that out.
Yes.
Upon hello, it was like, I know her. Is that right?
Yes, it's true. So
Same with Michelle. I'm like, I know him too.
So, anyways, I couldn't do anything. Death she was gone. And so I had to do the next best thing, which was to do something to honor her. And unlike the website, I wanted to do something to help other people to keep her memory alive. And I started to think of what that could be. And as you remember, if you heard in the beauty thing, she loved to dance. That's what she writes about, being on stage dancing. That was her favorite thing. But I couldn't think of what I could do that would be creative or new or different with dance. And then it just came to me because Emily was one of those kids who, although pretty intelligent and smart, had learning differences and struggled academically. And what I
Because she's a creative. We've discussed
Yes.
this. Creatives always have something else. And then because of that, it's sort of, I don't know, they end up balling all of their energy into all of their creative energy and just creating poems like this and what she wrote and put up on the window. Just a very deep thinker.
Yes,
Yeah.
and she was actually diagnosed through the school with what they called processing issues, and yet she fell in a gray area because she didn't need or qualify for special education, and yet in the regular classroom she was having tremendous difficulty. And what happened is, after she was killed, I went to her school and I said, what do you have for children like Emily? So a kid in the mainstream middle school classroom who's failing, struggling, really having a tough time, who can't afford to say, I'm going to get a tutor, I'm going to hire outside help. What do you have for those children? Because having had a child like that, I know the challenge that it is. I also know that it's not just homework help or help. You need intensive help with the subject that they're having trouble with, and someone who can take the time to really figure out why they're not doing well, how they learn, what's going on. And in addition to all of that, they need to also focus on things like a skill set of what a child needs to be a successful student. For example, you could be really good and know, let's say, your math, but if you don't know when the test is, what's on it, what to study, you're not going to do well.
You know what's amazing? How
What?
very often, and I get this currently even at school with my youngest kid. Well, he knows it's on the sheet. It's like, okay, maybe he didn't see it on the sheet. It doesn't mean that he's dumb or not looking, but we all just have a different way of reading
Yes.
and processing something. Back to that processing word.
Yes.
Boy, if I were to do anything and I had the time, it would. I wish there was some way to restructure just the way school is.
Well, listen, I will tell you
Come on.
that.
It's going back to the old school days, the one-room schoolhouse, the way
I
kids
agree.
learn. I really feel that way, and I have 3 kids. I told you this, 3 totally separate kinds of learners, an arty one, a super intellectual one, and a sport kid. And believe me, they think so differently. It's a miracle they went through the same school, really, but I get it.
Yes.
It's very frustrating as a parent, isn't it?
Yes, extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
And so what I did was create a program. Listen, in an ideal world, if I could wave a magic wand, yes, I would try to alter the exact school system, but my second best thing is to work within the system that exists and try and find solution for
And you're in a
children
good
who
school
fit this
system.
one. Well, where we were, yes, but I will say that I serve children in many different school systems and districts. It's not the one where Emily herself went, although I do run the program where she grew up and where she went to school. So basically what I did was create a program. We called it the CSEA program as an acronym for Successful Educational Achievement. And I make all the kids learn it, and they always stumble over
know,
what it
what?
means.
I would
We
just
just say C. We
Good.
just say the C
SEA.
program. It's
The
very
SEA,
easy.
like
Yes,
the- like
C
the ocean.
program. That's right. And that's why I thought of it, actually, because she grew up by the ocean, and I was trying to be clever and creative.
It's actually very clever. As you were saying that, I thought, well, she grew up there, and
Yes.
there you go. That was
At
very
least you
clever.
made the connection. So, yes, so I created this program, and basically it's exactly what we just talked about. The school will identify children who fit that profile.
So wait, let me just stop you for a minute. It's part of the Emily Shane Foundation.
Yes.
So the Emily Shane Foundation, and for people listening, I want to repeat it a couple of times so it gets in there. The Emily Shane Foundation, people can find it by going online to the
Right,
website.
EmilyShane.org.
EmilyShane.org. That's very important, that
Right.
org. If not, just look up the Emily Shane Foundation, right? And
Right,
take
and it'll
you
come
there.
up, absolutely.
Or what about the C program, as in the
I
ocean?
don't know, does that come up? I've never
I don't know, I've never looked.
Me
Let's
neither.
Google it
That's
later.
funny.
Somebody Google it for me. Miranda, can you Google that for me? The S. Thank you. We got somebody. We got her on that.
Okay.
No, so I want people to know, because a lot of times I'm looking for something and I'm like, ooh, I forgot the name. What was her name? Was Eleanor? And if you just can give them something simple, they'll still get there.
Right. Or just her name, Emily Shane, it should come up.
But and again, this helps kids in schools throughout the Southern California, LA.
We're
County.
only in LA,
County.
LA and Ventura County, because we have a couple of sites in Oxnard right now. We're actually looking at one. It hasn't been confirmed in Thousand Oaks. So yes,
And what it does is kids who've been identified as having learning and processing issues.
not necessarily.
Okay.
Any kid who's got F's and D's in middle school in the mainstream classroom who's not doing well and who can't afford any kind of outside support. That's basically our profile.
Okay, and then the schools will get these kids to you?
They will get them to me one way
Okay.
or another, whether it's through counselors, through working with the Boys and Girls Club, through the teachers themselves, principals I work with. Depending on the site, I have all different scenarios of how it's set up.
And then once these kids come to you, how do you match them up with a mentor and a tutor? How do you do that?
Well, every year I hope to source qualified and capable university students and or recent graduates. And the reason I use that age group is Emily herself experimented with who helped her once she hit middle school. And because it couldn't be me, that was not feasible anymore. It caused too much dissension in our household. And through a lot of experimentation, I found she actually did the best with that age group, and I know why. There's an immediate comfort level. They're great role models. They are in university. They've made it, so they can sort of
Right.
motivate their students to want to attain the same. Also, they don't perceive them as an authority figure as they might with an older person. So it just works. It's
does.
a great fit.
I know there's mentoring programs with middle schoolers and high schoolers, and I'm sure it's terrific, but it may not be as effective as with a university because, as you said, they've been through it. They got through.
Yes.
And they know what it takes to get all the way through. So you match the student with the university student.
Right.
And
they're trained. Even though they're vetted and qualified, they still must be trained before they ever begin with their student. So that's on that side. And then the students all go through a little orientation before they ever begin. So when they first come together, they're on the same page. They know there's no surprise. The student isn't wondering, why am I here and who is this person? The other thing which I think is important to mention is that we did tie in our original Pass It Forward website with the program. And what we did is the children, obviously this is a free program to them. There is no charge because we're helping disadvantaged children. However, their quote-unquote cost of participation is to do one good deed per mentoring session and enter it on our website.
Per mentoring session, Miranda, I was going to ask if you could just take a couple pictures from over there. Is that okay? Thanks. Because I want to put this on the website. So I'm trying to get her attention without like anybody noticing, but it's not happening. So I'm like, okay, hey, in the middle of my show, sorry. This is what happens on a podcast. This is not network television. Anyway, even from over there too would be just perfect. Trying to here I am directing my own show. You over there, get my good side. I mean,
That's
whatever.
really funny.
Always a performer. Anyway, but when I love the pass it forward, I said at first, remember, I said pay it forward. MIchel was very careful with me, and he said, no, it's pass it forward, because you're not paying for this, you're passing it forward.
Exactly.
You're giving something back. I love how you guys thought of these things, and those are the little things that make a difference, the pay it forward or the pass it forward, because the kids are realizing that this is something that was given to them, and they have to work for it, and now they're going to pass something. That's just terrific. So per session means each time that they're tutored?
Yes.
So what do they do again? Because they could just...
Anything
as a
really.
good deed, it could be as
Listen
simple
to your
as
mom and dad,
I
maybe?
mean, you can actually go on the website and read them, and some of them are funny because it could be I helped my friend, or I shared my lunch because they forgot their lunch, or I walked the family dog, or I cleaned my room, or I helped my mom prepare dinner. I mean, they're all different.
And they have to post it. They have to show
I
their
cheered up
mentor.
my friend who was sad. I mean, yes, they have to post it. And actually, this year we're instituting a new thing. Some of our sites actually want the children to get a photo, if they can, of them doing their good deeds. So we're going to try that out.
Oh boy, you're really going to get these kids going, I don't want to embarrass myself. Right? They're like, I got to take a picture too. It's like, here I am walking the dog, okay?
It's
Yeah,
65,
exactly.
It's 65 good deeds in a year.
That is incredible. And remember I said to you, how do you think of that? But I think once you get on a roll with good deeds, they just come pouring out of you, right?
And
Whether
we
it's
have
the
a
family
list.
dog or the dishes.
We've actually put together one of our site directors a couple years ago. She put together a good deeds idea list because some
I like
children
that.
have, what should I do or what can I do if they're stuck? And we always, when we do our little student orientation, we discuss it and we make sure they have ideas of what they might be able to do so they don't feel stumped.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And the program is very successful. We played a little bit of video last time that MIchel was on. I'm not sure we have the time to do that this time, but you had something that people had written to you and read to you about the impact that it's had on them.
Oh, well,
and
from the
that
mentor?
actually came from the mentor.
Yes.
You would think it would be from the middle schooler, but it's both sides that are
I will tell you
passing
that
it forward and getting a lot.
what's amazing about this program, and when I first put it together, I didn't really think of that side of it, was yes, it's helping children. And what I will say is while our goal is academic, because it is, we want them not to have Fs and hopefully raise their grades and not fail and pass. And that happens often, not always. Some kids just go from an F to a D, some go from an F to an A. It's all over the map. But more importantly, to me, more importantly than the grades, is that this child who may have no one else in their life, often who is there just for them, motivating them, making them feel good about themselves, making them feel empowered, giving them that sense of self that they need so badly that they may not have. That's more important. And what happens
And
is
the confidence that they get.
And no judgment.
So
and
much,
maybe
no
there's
judgment.
resistance initially. There is often. It's not always easy for the mentor at the beginning. Some kids are not happy about it because they have to confront what they're not good at and what they don't like doing. So it's not easy. But over time, almost always, a bond develops between these two people because, as you said, MIchel, the mentor is not judging them and is just there to help them, motivate them, encourage them, make them feel good about themselves. And that, to me, is the gift, because that will give the child that sense of self that they need so badly to succeed at whatever they're going to do in their lives.
Look, we all know someone who's struggling a little in school, whether they want to admit it or not, whether it's your own kid, whether it's a nephew, a niece, a neighbor, there's always somebody. This really stays with you, though, if you're struggling because you feel kind of dumb and then you don't want to tell anybody that you're struggling, and you sort of go through school that way a little bit.
It defines you.
It does define you, and then you can hide it. I would hide it because I had some processing issues, but they didn't really identify it as processing issues. They just were like, what do you mean you can't read that? I'm thinking, oh, man. And then, of course, I ended up figuring it out in a way. Somebody taught me a speed reading lesson once or twice, and I figured out how to do that, and I thought, oh, and it kind of opened up my whole world. But until that happened, you know, I didn't want to admit that I struggled from all kinds of things. And if you're struggling in reading, you're having trouble with math because maybe you're not reading the instructions properly. It just, you know, goes all the way through.
Absolutely. And also, if you think about it, if you're in a middle school classroom with, I don't know, 20 or 25 children, and the teacher says, okay, who doesn't understand that? Do you honestly think you're going to go, oh, man, I have no idea what you're talking about? It takes a very rare kid who's going to do that. So most kids will just sit there and scribble or not understand what's going on, and they're lost.
You know, my goal with the program and having you on today is to let people know that, and to realize that they can make a difference if they donate to go to MIchel.org, the Emily Shane Foundation, because how many kids are you mentoring through this?
Well, as I said, we started with 3, and this past year we had 110. And I will tell
Incredible.
you, I have waiting lists at almost every site.
Yeah,
often.
and because you need to fund it. So
right, and we could potentially expand. I mean, we've expanded so much, and I know there's so many more children who fit this profile who we could be helping if we had the resources.
Unbelievable. You're writing a book. You've written
I
a
wrote
book.
a book.
Can you lift
wrote
that
a
up
book.
for us?
I will, and I'll show it to the right camera. It's over here.
Can we see that? Put it kind of in front of where you are. There you go. Oh,
Is that good?
Emily's Gift: The True Story of Sherlock and Jackson.
Right.
This is the story about how you got your dog.
Correct. Dogs.
Dogs.
Plural, yes.
After Emily passed, and isn't that correct?
Before.
I can't.
Before.
Well, she brought them to us very soon before she was actually killed. And the way the book came to me, it wasn't that I cognitively initially was going to write a book. I actually had a dream. I think I told you. And I literally saw the book. And I saw the cover, I saw the pictures, I saw the whole story, and it was right before I woke up. And then I woke up and I turned to MIchel and I said, I have to write a book. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, no, I just saw it.
Michelle's like, here she goes again. Here she is again. Now she's writing a book. Okay, tell me your dream. And here's her dream.
And it's actually a true story. It is actually a very true story. And it's a great book in the sense that it helps children deal with loss because it is true and Emily dies in it. But it's a happy story. It has a very positive message. And it's actually true about how she, you know, we never ever had pets and how she brought these 2 dogs to us. And I will say for anyone who's pet lovers or who has animals, those dogs did help us through a terrible time in ways I can't even express, because we went from having 3 girls at home to an empty nest completely unexpectedly because my other 2 daughters went off to school. But we had these puppies. We had these puppies who we had to feed and walk, and they want your attention, and they are affectionate. And honestly, on many levels, those dogs really saved us.
They helped save you. That's why they have dogs that go to hospitals to cheer people up. I mean, dogs they're really such a gift, right? And so are the 2 of you. You 2 are amazing people. I really do think of you often because your courage to me is just really mean that. Very inspiring.
Thank you.
And you're also helping other people. Aren't you going and getting certified or learning how
right.
to help
I've
people
taken
through
some
grief?
courses and
My
I've
gosh,
read
what a busy lady.
extensively, and I've helped unofficially people with grief, and I'm now doing grief support. I'm not going to pursue any kind of degree
Career,
because I probably don't need
Well,
it.
you have the best degree.
And I really know from the few people I've helped so far that I can definitely make a difference for anyone who is struggling with loss and is having trouble coping.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank
Any
you.
other parting words you want to say to us and also to our
Daniel?
God, thank you so much. I'm so sorry, Daniel. You can edit that out, but please forgive me. I already told you in the beginning. I'll probably forget your name. Daniel Ralston, director for the film that right now, the documentary called On PCH. So we'll be looking for that too. So you guys have a lot going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
The only thing I have to say is pass it forward.
Pass it forward. perfect words to end on. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll see you again here next week. Actually, we have a special show if you're...
We won't be here.
You won't be here. I'll see you anyway. Actually, I will see you. I think we're all going to dinner, isn't
Yes,
it?
right.
yes.
We just can't get rid of each other. So, but if you stay tuned in our next hour, we actually have Fabio going to be in our studio live, so that should be a lot of fun. So stay tuned. We'll be back in about 10 minutes after this short break. Bye-bye.